The Nixie is a humanoid shapeshifter water spirits in Germanic mythology and folklore. Under a variety of names, they are common to the stories of all Germanic peoples, although they are perhaps best known from Scandinavian folklore. The related English knacker was generally depicted as a worm or dragon. More recent versions depict the spirits in other forms. Their sex, bynames, and various transformations vary geographically. The German Nix and his Scandinavian counterparts were male. The German Nix was a female river mermaid. Similar creatures are known from other parts of Europe, such as the Melusine in France, the Zana in Asturias, Spain, and the Slavic water spirits the Rusalka in Slavic countries. English folklore contains many creatures with similar characteristics to the Nix or Knack. These include Jenny Greenteeth, the Shellycoat, the river hag Peg Powler, the Brag, and the Grindillow. At Lyminster, near Arundel in the English county of West Sussex, there are today said to dwell, called Knackers, in a pool called the Knackahole. The great Victorian authority Walter William Skeat had plausibly suggested the pool's name of Knacker, a name attested from 1835, Horsfield, was likely derived from the Old English Nycor, a creature name found in Beowulf. Yet the waters at the pool were badly muddied by a local antiquarian named Samuel Evershed, who from 1866 tried assiduously to connect the pool with dragons and thus with the tale of St. George and the Dragon. Any authentic water sprite folklore the site may originally have had was thus trampled down by Evershed's enthusiastic inculcation of the local people in ideas about water dragons. The Nordic countries were male water spirits who played enchanted songs on the violin, luring women and children to drown in lakes or streams. However, not all of these spirits were necessarily malevolent. Many stories indicate at the very least that Knocker were entirely harmless to their audience and attracted not only women and children, but men as well with their sweet songs. Stories also exist wherein the Fosgrim agreed to live with a human who had fallen in love with him, but many of these stories ended with the Knock returning to his home, usually a nearby waterfall or brook. Compare the legend of Fenfock in Wales. The Knocker were said to grow despondent unless they had free, regular contact with a water source. The Norwegian Fosgrim or Grim, Swedish Stromkarl, is a related figure who, if properly approached, will teach a musician to play so adeptly that the trees dance and waterfalls stop at his music. It is difficult to describe the appearance of the Nix, as one of his central attributes was thought to be shape-shifting. Perhaps he did not have any true shape. He could show himself as a man playing the violin in brooks and waterfalls, though often imagined as fair and naked today. In folklore he was more frequently described as wearing more or less elegant clothing, but also could appear to be treasure or various floating objects, or as an animal, most commonly in the form of a brook horse. The enthralling music of the Knock was most dangerous to women and children, especially pregnant women and unbaptized children. He was thought to be most active during Midsummer's Night, on Christmas Eve, and on Thursdays. However, these superstitions do not necessarily relate to all the versions listed here. Many, if not all of them, developed after the Christianizing of the northern countries, as was the case of similar stories of fairies and other entities in other areas. When malicious Knocker attempted to carry off people, they could be defeated by calling their name. This was believed to cause their death. Another belief was that if a person bought the Knock a treat of 3 drops of blood, a black animal, some branvin, Scandinavian vodka, or snus, wet snuff, dropped into the water, he would teach his enchanting form of music. The Knock was also an omen for drowning accidents. He would scream at a particular spot in a lake or river, in a way reminiscent of the loon, and on that spot, a fatality would later take place. He was also said to cause drownings, but swimmers could protect themselves against such a fate by throwing a bit of steel into the water. In Faroese, the word Nyker refers specifically to a supernatural horse, described in one Faroese text thus: the Nyker dwells in water, at the bottom, down in the depths, he has his lair, from here he often goes on to land and it is not good to meet him. Sometimes he is like a beautiful little horse which seems to be good and tame, and thus he lures people to draw near to him to pat him and stroke him along the back. But when they come to touch the tail, they become stuck fast to him and then he releases no one, but he drags them with him to the bottom of the water. Sometimes he encounters people in human form, as a handsome youth, to lure young women to himself, and promises them joy and gladness in his hall if they want to go along with him. But if they get a suspicion of who he is, when they are giving themselves away, such that they can call him by his true name, Niker, then he loses the power over them and must release them and go along into his waters. It is said that the Niker can equally well change itself into the form of all quadrupedal animals, except that he does not know how to create the horn points of a ram or a male lamb on himself. But when he hasn't changed his form, he is like a horse, and it has come about that people gain power over him by carving a cross into his back, and then they have been able to have him drag great stones by his tail down from the mountains to homesteads or houses. Some are still seen in Husavik in Sandoy and in Eysturoy, and the big rocks that are gathered together there bear witness to how strong he is. At Takmiri in Sandoy lies one huge rock, which they wanted to have him draw to Husavik, but his tail broke here, and the stone remains there. One part of the Niker's tail, which was attached to the stone, is visible on it still. The German Nix and Nixie are types of river merman and mermaid who may lure men to drown, like the Scandinavian type, akin to the Celtic Melusine and similar to the Greek siren. The German epic Nibelungenlied mentions the Nix in connection with the Danube, as early as 1180 to 1210. Nixes in folklore became water sprites, who try to lure people into the water. The males can assume many different shapes, including that of a human, fish, and snake. The females bear the tail of a fish. When they are in human forms, they can be recognized by the wet hem of their clothes. The Nixes are portrayed as malicious in some stories but harmless and friendly in others. By the 19th century, Jacob Grimm mentions the Nixie to be among the water sprites who love music, song, and dancing, and says, like the sirens, the Nixie by her song draws listening youth to herself, and then into the deep. According to Grimm, they can appear human but have the barest hint of animal features. The Nix had a slit ear, and the Nixie, a wet skirt. Grimm thinks these could symbolize they are higher beings who could shapeshift to animal form.